Hello everyone. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Now, let's begin. I knew something was wrong the second I pulled into the Walmart parking lot. It wasn't one thing I could point to, but a dozen little things pressing down on me at once, enough to make me feel like the whole place was waiting for me. The lot. Lights flickered like bad fluorescent bulbs in a basement, stuttering in uneven rhythms that made shadows stretch and twitch across the cracked asphalt. Shopping carts were scattered like bones, wheels turned at odd angles, as if abandoned mid-run. A group of teenagers lounged near the entrance laughing too loud, but there was no joy in it, just a hollow, mean edge that made the sound carry across the lot like metal scraping concrete. I hate Walmart. Always have. It's the smell, the lighting, the chaos inside that feels like no one's in control. But that night I didn't have a choice. My boss had dropped a bomb on me, an early morning team meeting I wasn't prepared for. Printer ink, notepads, coffee pods, 3 stupid items that now stood between me and unemployment. I had already been warned once the week before. One more misstep and I was done. So there I was. Thursday evening, bracing myself against the biting wind that cut straight through my jacket, trying to ignore the feeling that I should turn around and leave. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a reminder of the list I'd typed up hastily. I slipped it away, tightened my grip on my keys, and forced my feet toward the sliding doors. The entrance yawned open with a mechanical groan, spilling out a mix of smells that made me flinch. Disinfectant, burnt popcorn, and something faintly sour, like spoiled milk that had been scrubbed but not erased. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, relentless, filling every corner with a pale, buzzing glare that made shadows feel like intruders. I grabbed a cart. The handle was sticky, tacky enough that I had to wipe my hand on my jeans after touching it. People bustled around me, families with overflowing carts, a tired-looking mother dragging a toddler by the wrist, a couple arguing quietly in produce. The ordinariness of it all should have calmed me, but instead it made me feel worse, like I was out of step with everyone else. I started with the office supplies aisle, telling myself I'd be quick, just in and out, no wandering. I picked up a pack of notepads, turned to grab pens, and that's when it happened. The prickling sensation at the back of my neck, the one you only get when you know someone's watching. I lifted my head slowly, pretending to look at the shelves. And that's when I saw him, tall, bald, skin pale, marked with gray smudges and scars. His white tank top was stained, clinging to his ribs, and his jeans hung loose, shredded at the knees. He didn't move, didn't pretend to browse like everyone else. He just stood at the end of the aisle, body rigid, his bloodshot eyes locked on me with a stare so heavy it made my stomach twist. I gripped the cart harder, forcing myself to look away, my throat dry. Maybe he wasn't staring at me. Maybe I was being paranoid. But when I turned back, he was gone. Relief washed through me for all of 3 seconds. Because when I turned into the next aisle, there he was again. Closer, half hidden behind a shelf of cleaning supplies. His gaze hadn't shifted. The air seemed thicker suddenly, the fluorescent buzz louder. The space between me and him shrinking even though neither of us moved. I felt the urge to run, to scream, to do anything but stand there. Instead, I abandoned the cart. My bladder ached with a sudden, sharp urgency. Restroom. If I could get there, lock the door, splash cold water on my face, maybe I could shake this feeling. The women's restroom near the front had a yellow sign across the doorway. Closed for maintenance. Great, I muttered. More to ground myself than anything else. My voice sounded too thin, bouncing off the tile walls. That's when I felt it again. The prickling, the crawling sensation creeping up my spine. I turned my head. Slowly. He was there, at the far end of the hallway, half in shadow, half in flickering light, tilting his head at an angle that made something inside me clench. I bolted. Down the nearest aisle, weaving between shelves, heart jackhammering. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I could feel him behind me, steady, unhurried, like he knew I wouldn't get away. The second restroom was near the back of the store. I shoved the heavy door open and slipped inside, the sudden silence swallowing me whole. The store's noises, voices, carts rattling, PA announcements, cut off instantly, like I had stepped into another world. I rushed into the nearest stall, locking the door, pressing my back against the metal. The cold seeped through my jacket. My breathing was loud, ragged. I told myself I was imagining this, that he wasn't following me, that I was safe. The restroom door creaked open. Slow, deliberate footsteps echoed across the tile. Heavy, measured, my skin went cold. I crouched, lowering myself, and peered under the stall door. Boots, battered, scuffed, dirt-caked. They stopped right outside my stall. My breath caught. My chest hurt from holding it in. Through the thin crack in the doorframe, I saw it. His eye, bloodshot, pressed to the gap. Staring. "Leave me alone." The words tore out of me, shaky, high-pitched. No answer, no flinch, just a low, guttural sound that vibrated against the metal, inhuman and chilling. Then, bang. His forehead slammed into the door. The stall rattled. Bang. The lock shook in its slot. Bang. Each hit louder, more violent, making the whole stall shudder. My body trembled with it, my breath coming in panicked gasps. And then, silence. I pressed, my hands over my mouth, fighting to stay quiet. The lights above flickered, not the lazy flicker of bad wiring, but a violent strobe, making the tiles glow and fade like they were breathing. In the cracked mirror across the room, I caught sight of something that made my stomach drop. My reflection, only it wasn't me. The face staring back smiled, my own face, but stretched too wide, eyes too dark. The stall lock shifted. Slowly. On its own. The click of metal sliding out of place echoed like a gunshot. I pressed against the door, but it kept moving, inch by inch. The boots were gone. I couldn't see them, but the door kept opening. "Ma'am, is everything all right?" The sudden voice made me cry out. The main door banged open, and a Walmart employee in a blue vest stood there, frowning. I stumbled out, shaking, my words broken. "There's a man, he was right here." The employee stepped past me, glanced around. Empty stalls, empty floor, nothing. He looked back at me with careful disbelief. "There's no one here." I shook my head. I saw him. He was right there. "Maybe you need some air," he said, his voice soft, like you'd use with a child. I let him guide me out, my legs weak. The store looked the same as before, crowded, ordinary, but I couldn't shake the wrongness pressing in on me. My abandoned cart was gone. My phone buzzed in my pocket, but when I pulled it out, the screen was filled with static, text garbled beyond recognition. I left without buying anything, nearly running to my car. The automatic doors reflected my shape as I passed, but my reflection lingered a second too long after I stepped through. I drove home on autopilot, hands white-knuckled on the wheel, replaying the guttural growl in my head, the slam of bone against metal, the smile in the mirror that wasn't mine. I didn't go back to Walmart, not that night, not ever. But later, when the apartment was silent, I heard it. Bang, bang, bang. The sound of skull against stall door, coming from somewhere that wasn't outside, coming from inside my head or maybe inside my walls. And when I passed a mirror, I didn't look too long. Because sometimes if I did, the reflection smiled first. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard it. The heavy thud of his forehead slamming into the metal stall door over and over, vibrating through my chest like I was still there. My walls felt too thin, my apartment too hollow, and every shadow stretched, wrong, moving when I wasn't looking directly at it. I kept telling myself it was stress, that my mind had spun itself out of control. I'd been anxious about work for weeks, drinking too much coffee, staying up late to meet deadlines. Maybe I had hallucinated him. Maybe my brain had created the man in the Walmart as some grotesque symbol of the pressure I was under. It was easier to believe that than the alternative. But even as I whispered those excuses to myself, my phone sat on the nightstand, the screen still glitching with static every time I tapped it awake. I couldn't even call someone to reassure me I wasn't losing it. By morning, my eyes burned from lack of sleep. I showered, dressed, tried to pretend like everything was normal. The meeting was a blur. I caught myself zoning out as my boss droned about projections, the fluorescent light above the conference table flickering just enough to make me dizzy. At one point, I glanced into the darkened glass of the office window and swore I saw him, the bald man standing just over my shoulder, smiling faintly. I jumped so hard I knocked my pen to the floor. Nobody else saw him. Nobody reacted. The rest of the day passed in fragments. Coworkers' voices blurred into noise. The traffic outside seemed too loud, car horns dragging like growls. By the time I got home, I was shaking from exhaustion and nerves. I tried to eat, tried to distract myself with TV, but the reflection in the black screen when I turned it off lingered too long again. That same stretched smile, my face but not mine. That night I dreamed of the Walmart bathroom, the sound of his boots, the stall door creaking open without being touched. When I woke, my clock said 3:33 a.m., the digits glowing too bright in the dark. Someone was humming. I froze. My apartment walls are thin, yes, but not that thin. The sound was inside. A low, broken tune like a lullaby slowed down, drawn out. It came from the hallway outside my bedroom door. I couldn't move. My body locked up, every muscle rigid with fear. The humming stopped and then bang, bang, bang against my bedroom door. I bit my fist to keep from screaming. The door didn't open, the banging didn't last, but I didn't sleep again until the sun came up. The next day, I called my mom, desperate for some kind of grounding. "You sound tired," she said. "I haven't been sleeping." "Too much stress at work?" "Yeah," I lied. Because how could I explain the truth? That I was being followed by a man who might not even exist? That mirrors showed me things my own eyes didn't? That night I left all the lights on. I unplugged the TV so its screen couldn't reflect. I hung towels over the mirrors, anything to stop the wrong version of me from looking back. But the banging came anyway. First faint, then stronger, shaking the frame of my front door. My neighbors didn't react. No one came to check, just me, curled on the couch clutching my phone that still flickered static instead of dialing out. By the third night, my nerves were raw. I started to wonder if I was going insane, if maybe the stress had finally cracked something in my head. But if it was just in my mind, why did I wake up with bruises on my arms, shaped like fingers? I decided I had to prove it to myself, had to go back. The idea terrified me, but I couldn't keep living like this, jumping at shadows, hiding from mirrors. If I saw nothing at Walmart, maybe I could convince myself it had been a hallucination. Maybe I could reclaim my life. So I drove there, late, near closing. The lot was mostly empty, the flickering light still stuttering against the pavement. Inside, the hum of fluorescence was the same. People shopped, moved, spoke like nothing was wrong. I forced myself toward the back of the store, past the aisles, where I'd seen him standing. The office supplies, the cleaning products. My cart was gone, of course, but the memory of abandoning it lingered like a bruise. Finally, I stood outside the restroom door. My heart pounded so hard it made my vision blur. I told myself I'd just look inside, just prove it was empty. I pushed the door open. Silence swallowed me. The stalls lined up neat, empty. The mirrors were cracked, spiderwebbed across the glass, though I didn't remember that from before. The smell of rust hung faint in the air. I stepped closer, my shoes squeaking faintly on the tile. The lights flickered. Once, twice, and then in the mirror, not behind me, but inside the glass itself, I saw him. The bald man, pressed against the other side, bloodshot eyes fixed on mine, lips curling into a smile. I stumbled back, colliding with the stall door. The reflection didn't move. He didn't blink. He just watched. And then the humming began again. Low, broken, coming not from the air around me, but vibrating up through the floor, through my bones. The stall door behind me creaked. Slowly. I didn't wait. I bolted, running from the restroom, through the aisles, out the sliding doors. The cold night air hit me like a slap. I didn't stop until I was in my car, doors locked, chest heaving. I didn't go home that night. I drove aimlessly, ended, up at a 24-hour diner sitting in a booth until sunrise, staring at the silver napkin holder. My own reflection in its curved surface grinned back at me, though my mouth was trembling. It hasn't stopped since. The reflections. The humming. The banging at 3:33 a.m. My phone still shows static when I try to call for help. My neighbors don't answer their doors. I don't know if I ever left that bathroom. Sometimes I wonder if I'm still there, if I never escaped, if the world I came back to is just another reflection, the wrong side of the glass. And every night, when I lie awake, I hear it. The sound that has become the only constant in my life. Bang, 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 and I know, whether he's real or not, whether I'm insane or not, that he's not finished with me. Not yet. I can't walk into a Walmart without feeling like the air has turned against me. It's not a fear I can reason away. It's a pressure, a static weight that crawls beneath my skin the second the sliding doors open and the fluorescent light spills over me. Most people walk inside and see bargains, wide aisles, endless shelves stacked high with cheap necessities. I walk inside and feel watched. The smell of cardboard, rubber, and cleaning fluid hits the back of my throat and my chest tightens as if I've inhaled something toxic. The sound of the intercom, those scripted, cheerful announcements, lands in my ear like whispers I'm not supposed to hear. It always takes me back to that night. The night everything changed. I was only 8 years old, small enough to still feel invisible in the shadow of adults, yet old enough to understand that the world wasn't always safe. My mom had taken my older sister and me to the Walmart in Crestwood, Kentucky, the kind of town where everyone thought nothing bad ever happened. It was late August, sticky hot, the sky fading into purples and oranges as we drove out past the empty fields. My mom had been working overtime that week, tired but still determined to keep our tradition alive, the back-to-school shopping trip. I remember bouncing in the back seat, barely able to contain my excitement over something as simple as a pair of shoes. Shoes meant the world to me then. Proof that I was growing. Proof that I could be different from last year's me. I had begged for sneakers that glowed or shined or stood out in some way. My mom had sighed, half joking that she'd think about it, but I knew if I behaved, she'd say yes. And she did. In the shoe aisle, under the buzzing lights, I found them, neon sneakers, bright as lightning bugs. My heart swelled. I slipped them on, and my reflection in the scratched floor, tiles looked like someone faster, braver, better. We drifted onward, my sister rattling off things about binders and pencils. I trailed behind, staring at my feet. One shoelace dangled loose, dragging along the floor. I stopped to tie it. "Mom, wait up," I called, but they didn't hear me. Their voices and footsteps carried farther down the aisle. When I bent down, to knot the laces, the air seemed to shift. Something changed, not a sound exactly, more like a hush falling over everything else. My fingers fumbled, and when I looked up, my mom and sister were gone. Not far, not out of the store, but gone in the way a dream slips when you wake too quickly. That's when I felt him. A hand landed on my shoulder, too heavy for comfort. The grip was firm, not like my mom's guiding hand or even a teacher's steady correction, but something colder, something with intent. I turned and the world narrowed. He wore a gray hoodie, a baseball cap pulled low, a beard that only half covered his jaw, and a smile. Not a human smile, not one meant to reassure. It was curved wrong, stretched thin, like someone imitating, an expression they'd only seen in photographs. Before I could scream, he lifted me. My feet kicked uselessly, the neon sneakers flashing in the fluorescent light. "Sorry, he's just fussy tonight," he said, his voice casual, practiced. He carried me as though I were weightless. My fists pounded against his chest, but he didn't even blink. The world around us blurred. Shoppers with carts, shelves stacked with cereal, voices over the loudspeaker. None of them looked. None of them cared I screamed, or I thought I did. The sound came out thin, strangled, eaten alive by the vast space of the store. No one turned. No one noticed. The closer we drew to the sliding doors, the colder the air seemed to grow. It wasn't just fear. It was something else. Something unnatural. A pulling, like the space beyond the glass wasn't the parking lot anymore, but a tunnel, leading into someplace dark, someplace without return. I fought harder. I bit down on his sleeve. He didn't react. He just kept walking, slow and steady, the smile never fading. And then, through the blur of tears, I saw them. A family, a mother, a father, 2 kids. The mother's eyes caught mine. Confusion then, dawning horror. Her hand rose, her voice cutting sharp through the hum. "What's going on here?" The man faltered. His grip loosened. For the first time he seemed uncertain, as though the script he had been following no longer applied. I tore free. My legs hit the ground, running. The neon sneakers slapped against the tile, carrying me toward the family. The father moved instantly, blocking me with his body, his arm firm around my shoulders. Behind him, the man in the hoodie turned, but something flickered across his face, something not entirely human. His features seemed to twitch, like a mask slipping. And then he was gone, weaving through the aisles, vanishing before the sliding doors ever opened. By the time my mom found me, my sobs were already breaking through. I collapsed against her, choking out what had happened. She held me so tight I thought I'd break, whispering over and over, "You're okay, you're okay, you're okay." But I wasn't okay. I never would be. The police came, took statements, asked questions. I told them what I saw, but even at 8 years old, I could tell they didn't believe all of it. They believed the attempt. They believed the man existed, but not the way I described him. Not the way his smile had stretched. Not the way the air had felt wrong. Not the way he had walked with me like the exit was pulling us somewhere else, entirely. They wrote down words like possible abduction and suspect fled, but they didn't write down the part that kept me awake at night. That part lived only with me. As the days turned to weeks, I realized something chilling. I hadn't just been afraid of him. I had been afraid of the store itself. The aisles no longer felt safe. The shelves seemed taller, darker, corners stretching longer than they should. Sometimes, even at home, I'd hear the hum of those fluorescent lights buzzing in my ears. Sometimes I'd wake up convinced I could smell that Walmart air. Dust, bleach, something faintly metallic. Years passed. I grew up. But the shadow of that night grew with me. Every Walmart I stepped into afterward carried the same tension, the same static charge. I'd walk past a mirror in the clothing section and see a flicker of gray in the reflection. Gone. When I turned, I'd catch a voice over the intercom, and for half a second I'd swear it wasn't English or that it was speaking directly to me. The older I got, the harder it became to tell where the memory ended and the haunting began. Because sometimes in the frozen food aisle or standing at self-checkout, I swear I feel it again, the hand. Heavy. Cold. Sometimes I smell his sleeve, the faint, sour odor of damp fabric. Sometimes I hear him, just behind me, breathing. And sometimes, God, sometimes, I see the smile, reflected faintly in the glass of the freezer door, stretched wrong, waiting. Maybe it's all in my head. Maybe that night carved a wound so deep I've been bleeding fear ever since. Or maybe what I felt wasn't just a man at all. Maybe he wasn't trying to take me out of the store, but into something else. Somewhere past the sliding doors where no one returns. All I know is this. When I walk into Walmart, I still look over my shoulder. Every single time. And sometimes, when the hum of the lights grows too loud, when the air turns too heavy, I wonder, did I really escape that night? Or has he been walking just a step behind me ever since, waiting for the moment I finally stop running? I felt it the moment I stepped through the automatic doors. a prickle at the base of my skull, a tug in the pit of my stomach that I couldn't shake. Walmart should have felt ordinary, safe, fluorescent light bouncing off linoleum, the stale tang of popcorn and bleach in the air. But that day it felt wrong, like I'd crossed an invisible threshold I couldn't undo. My hand instinctively rested on my stomach, rubbing tiny circles over the life inside me. 8 months pregnant and exhausted, I told myself it was just hormones, that everything was fine, but nothing about this store felt fine. The aisles stretched endlessly, ordinary in appearance but suffused with a heaviness I couldn't place. I kept my cart close, my fingers brushing against packages almost automatically, when I noticed the first anomaly. A coin. It lay half hidden on the edge of a shelf near the electronics section. Antique-looking, copper, dulled by time, etched with an intricate pattern I couldn't recognize. I bent down, lifting it with the tips of my fingers. Cold. Heavy. It pulsed faintly in my palm, though the air was warm. The instant I held it, a shiver ran down my spine. I shouldn't have taken it. I shrugged it off, slipping it into my pocket. I told myself it was just curiosity, nothing more. But the store seemed different after that. Shadows stretched too long. The overhead lights flickered. The low hum of the air conditioning became a whisper I couldn't ignore. And then I saw him. A man, standing rigid by the DVD aisle, watching me. Not casually, but with an intensity that made my skin crawl. His eyes were sharp, calculating, as though he could see into me. The moment our gazes met, the coin in my pocket thrummed faintly, a subtle vibration that seemed synchronized with my heartbeat. My chest tightened. I turned away, pushing my cart toward the baby section, trying to convince myself I was overreacting. The sensation followed me. Whispers at the edge of hearing, shelves seeming to shift when I wasn't looking, shadows pooling unnaturally around the edges of my vision. I tried to ignore it, focusing on wipes and diapers, but my mind kept circling back to the coin. It was small, insignificant maybe, but I knew instinctively it wasn't ordinary. Then the first bang
came.
A loud echoing crack from the back of the store. My body froze, and then another, and another. The unmistakable sound of glass shattering followed by screams. I gripped the cart, panic clawing at my chest. People were running, shoving, screaming. But in the chaos, I wasn't just afraid of the gunfire. I was afraid of him. The man in the DVD aisle had vanished, or maybe he had always been somewhere closer than I realized. My pulse raced. The coin seemed to burn in my pocket, a faint hum now rising into a higher, almost unbearable pitch. The air thickened, pressing down, turning every breath into labor. A woman appeared beside me, clutching her child. "We need to get out," she cried. Her voice trembled. I nodded, stumbling after her, but the aisles twisted into a labyrinth, each turn offering no escape. Shadows gathered at the edges of vision, and faint faces appeared in them. Shoppers long dead, employees who had vanished years ago. Their mouths opened in silent screams, eyes hollow, accusing. I reached the automatic doors, the night air cold and sharp against my overheated skin. But safety didn't come. In the parking lot, headlights flickered, too many of them, forming an unnatural pattern that made my chest tighten. A black SUV pulled up slowly. The man in the hoodie stepped out, but he was not alone. 2 others trailed him, all moving with an unnatural coordination like dancers performing a ritual. "You shouldn't have taken it," the man in the hoodie said, his voice low, reverberating unnervingly. He gestured toward the coin in my pocket. "Give it back." I froze. "I don't know what you mean," I whispered. The coin pulsed again, warm now, almost alive. The SUV doors slammed shut, tires screeching as the engine roared. Panic surged, a wild instinct to run taking over. I ran toward my car, ignoring the pain in my back, the way my legs threatened to buckle under me. The SUV followed, relentless. But then I saw it. The glimmering light from the coin, faintly illuminating shapes. That didn't belong. Ghostly shoppers, spectral employees, A man pressed against a display case, mouthing words I couldn't hear. I stumbled, almost dropping the coin, and when my hand touched it again, a vision engulfed me. The store in another era, decades past. I saw the same layout, the same fluorescent lights, only dirtier, older. And there, in the center aisle, a group of people in long robes, faces obscured, chanting. At the center, an elderly man held a coin, my coin, above a crib, murmuring words I couldn't understand. My stomach tightened painfully. The vision dissolved, leaving the hum of the coin still in my pocket. Mark's voice broke through my panic. "Where are you? Are you safe?" I swallowed, voice trembling. I don't know. They're after me. Some men. The coin. My fingers unconsciously pressed against my belly. "I think it's cursed." He sounded skeptical, exhausted, but I didn't care. "I have to get out of here," I said. We drove, winding streets barely easing the tension. But even with the SUV gone, I felt it. Eyes in the dark, faint whispers following me through the corners of my vision. I didn't speak. The coin hummed faintly against my body, and I knew I had brought something alive into the world, and it was already beginning to change everything. The visions came again, flashes at the edge of my sight. A mother cradling. A child decades ago. A man chanting in the shadows, hands reaching for a coin now in my possession. The hum in my pocket was a pulse now, synchronized with my own heartbeat. A bridge between me and the history I couldn't comprehend. By the time we reached my apartment, the sun had set completely. The shadows inside seemed thicker, almost tangible. Crawling along the walls, Mark tried to distract me, but I couldn't look away. "I think they're part of a cult," I said quietly, tracing the coin through my pocket. "They want it back. They want my baby." Mark's hands gripped mine, voice steady. "We'll figure it out. We'll go to the police." I shook my head. They aren't ordinary people. And this coin, it's alive. It shows me things that happened here. Things they've done. If I give it back, it's not just mine, it's them. That night, the coin pulsed beneath my pillow, faint warmth against my skin, whispering faint words I almost understood. Shapes drifted just beyond my vision, shadowy figures in the corner, faces pale, lips moving soundlessly. The sense of being watched was no longer fear, it was expectation. They were waiting. They always were, and the visions weren't finished. I saw the store empty, lit only by flickering fluorescent light, silent except for my own footsteps. And then, the robed men appeared again, surrounding a crib. The coin in my hand glowed. And in the center, a child, untouched by fear but radiant with an unnatural light. My child. I woke screaming, Mark beside me, holding me close. The coin had cooled inert in my palm, but the vision lingered, burned into my mind. I had no idea how much of it was real. All I knew was this: I couldn't give the coin back. And, if I kept it, I didn't know what horrors I had invited, and they weren't finished with me. The next night, sleep eluded me. Every creak of the apartment, every passing car, set my nerves on edge. The coin lay in my hand on the bedside table, cold now, but its faint hum was always there, a pulse I couldn't ignore. Shadows seemed longer, corners darker, and I could swear figures moved just beyond my sight, watching, waiting. I tried to tell myself it was paranoia, but deep down I knew better. The visions were not fantasies, the faces, the chanting, the glowing child. They had happened, or they would, and I was at the center of it. Mark tried to calm me, tried to distract me with mundane talk about hospital shifts, prenatal checkups, even the grocery list for the coming week. But my mind kept circling the coin. It was small, innocuous, a simple copper circle engraved with strange runes, yet it had drawn them here, drawn them into my life, and I didn't know how or why. By midnight, I knew I couldn't stay home. I needed to see the store. I had to know what the coin was, what it held, and what they wanted from me. I slipped into my car, clutching the coin in my hand like a lifeline, and drove back to Walmart. The parking lot was silent, unnervingly so. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting the lot in blotchy patches of illumination and darkness. My pulse raced, every shadow a potential threat. And then I saw them, the SUV, parked diagonally across the lot, engines off, figures inside. Waiting, I didn't stop, I didn't slow. I parked my car near the front, heart hammering, and stepped inside. The store was empty now, still open but lifeless. Shelves cast long shadows, aisles stretching like tunnels into darkness. And there, in the electronics section, they were waiting. The three men from the SUV standing like statues. The man in the hoodie stepped forward. Behind him I could see a fourth figure, a frail, elderly man in long, dark robes, hands clasped over something small but gleaming. The air around him hummed with an energy I could feel pressing against my chest. "You shouldn't have taken it," the hoodie man said, voice low but not angry. Calculating, expectant. I swallowed, clutching the coin tightly. "I don't know what it is," I whispered. "I just found it, please. I don't want any trouble." The elderly man tilted his head, eyes sharp as blades. "No trouble?" His voice was calm, resonant, carrying a weight that made my knees feel weak. "Child, you hold what has been sought for decades. That coin contains more than metal. It contains spirit, energy. The purity you carry within you can harness it." My breath caught. "Harness it? You mean my baby?" He nodded slowly. "We wish to perform the ritual, transfer its power into the child to contain it, to control it. You are the only vessel who can sustain it, and you are unwilling. That is why you run." I stumbled backward, the coin pulsing in my pocket, warmth now spreading like liquid fire into my palm. Whispers rose around me, faint at first, then louder, echoes of the store's history, employees long dead, shoppers lost to tragedy, all converging into a cacophony of silent screams. Spectral forms drifted through the aisles, faces pale and hollow, mouths moving soundlessly. They were warning me. Or maybe laughing. I couldn't tell. "I will not let you touch my baby," I said, voice firmer than I felt. The elderly man's eyes glinted, and the temperature in the store seemed to drop. "You misunderstand, child," he said softly. "We do not wish to harm. We wish to protect. From the coin itself, from what it holds. You cannot control it. But your baby." His hand lifted slightly and I could see the runes on the coin reflected in his gaze. "Your child can." The coin in my hand pulsed violently now, throbbing like a heartbeat. Shadows swirled around it, and I saw them. Glimpses of other children, other vessels long gone, their energy absorbed into the artifact. I realized with a cold surge of horror that this was no longer just about me. The coin, the cult, the ritual, they were all connected to something older. Something alive. The hoodie man stepped closer. "Give it to us. You do not understand the danger. The visions, you've seen them. They are not dreams. The coin calls. It is hungry. And it is drawn to your child." I shook my head, clutching the coin tighter. "I don't care. I won't let you. I'll protect her." The store shifted. Shelves groaned. The fluorescent lights flickered and died in a cascading wave, plunging us into darkness. Only the coin glowed faintly in my hand, illuminating the men's faces, casting shadows that stretched impossibly long. The spectral figures coalesced around us, their mouths moving, some screaming, some whispering in a language I almost understood. Almost. Then the elderly man stepped forward, raising a hand. Words, low and resonant, dripped from his lips like slow-moving smoke. The air shimmered around him. A circle of faint light emerged on the floor, symbols forming, glowing softly. I felt the coin pulling toward the circle, its warmth spreading, trying to wrench itself from my grasp. I turned to run, but the store seemed alive now. Aisles bending, shelves elongating, the ghosts pressing closer, guiding and warning me all at once. I stumbled over a fallen display, scraping my palms and knees, but I didn't stop. I reached the exit and burst into the night air, The coin was still in my hand, thrumming violently, and the shadows of the store seemed to stretch behind me, twisting impossibly, reaching. I didn't stop until my car, parked a block away, came into view. I jumped inside, clutching the steering wheel, the coin against my stomach. The hum had subsided slightly, but the visions remained. Shadows lingered at the edge of my vision. Figures from the store, the ritual, the chanting. They followed. Didn't go home. I didn't sleep. I drove until the first pale light of dawn, until I could reach the hospital where my baby would be delivered. I kept the coin hidden, pressed into my pocket beneath my clothes, against my body. When she was born, I held her in my arms, exhausted, trembling. Tiny hands, perfect features, her eyes closed against the world. And then, I noticed it. A faint glow in her irises, so slight I thought I imagined it at first. But it was real, and I knew. Part of the coin's power had passed into her. I whispered over and over, "I will protect you, I will keep you safe no matter what." But I also knew the truth. I was trapped. The cult had not vanished. They were waiting, patient as shadows. The coin, the visions, the lingering spirits, they were a permanent presence now. I could not give up the artifact, not for her safety, not for mine. And I could not ignore what I had seen. The hospital room was quiet except for her soft breathing and the faint, unnatural glow in her eyes. I touched her tiny hand, feeling the warmth, feeling the pulse of the coin through her mother's body. The visions flickered at the edge of my mind. The ghosts of the store, the chanting figures, the elderly man watching, always watching, and I understood with a clarity that left my chest tight and my stomach cold. This is only the beginning. Whatever, I had unleashed whatever had passed into her, the cult would not rest, and neither would the coin. The shadows had followed me home, and now they were watching her. I kissed her forehead, whispering into the quiet, "We will survive this. We have to." But even as I spoke, I saw it. A flicker of movement in the corner of the room, indistinct, a shadow that lingered just beyond the lamplight. Waiting, patient, hungry. And I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to my core, that some part of the coin's power was already awake inside her, and that the world I had once known was gone forever. They would come for her, and soon. Working at Walmart was usually the calmest part of my day. I don't say that because I loved the job. Most nights were a blur of repetitive tasks, tired customers, and the dull beeps of checkout scanners. But there was something oddly comforting about the routine. The store never changed. The shelves were always there to be stocked. The hum of fluorescent lights overhead was constant, almost hypnotic. Outside of work, my life felt unstable. Bills piled up faster than I could pay them. My apartment, a cheap one-bedroom just behind the store, was little more than a place to sleep between shifts. Relationships came and went. Family was distant in every sense of the word. But Walmart, it was steady, predictable. The best part was that my commute was nothing. I could leave my apartment, cross the cracked blacktop of the employee lot, step over a sleepy side street, and be home in 5 minutes flat. I usually entered and exited through the back entrance near the loading dock. It was convenient and almost always quiet, away from the chaos of the main entrance. That routine had become a kind of ritual, one of the few constants in my life. But the thing about routines is how fragile they really are. One evening, heading in for my shift, I noticed something different. The loading dock lot was almost always empty, except for delivery trucks or the occasional employee car that had overflowed from the main lot. But that night, a dark brown van was parked near the dumpsters. Not just parked, but positioned wrong, too close to the trash bins, angled like it had been shoved there without care. I slowed as I crossed the lot, frowning. It wasn't unusual to see cars back there, but something about this one unsettled me. The windows were tinted darker than usual, almost opaque. The paint was dull, chipped, like it had seen better days. I told myself it was nothing. Someone's clunker, maybe. A temp worker, a night stalker who didn't want to park far. Still, my stomach twisted as I walked past. I forced myself not to look back. Inside, the store was its usual blur of voices, carts, and stale air conditioning. The hours ticked by in their predictable rhythm, scanning, stocking, answering half-hearted customer questions. By the time my shift ended, exhaustion pressed down on me like a heavy blanket. I just wanted a hot shower in bed. But when I walked toward the back entrance, that twisting feeling returned. The lot outside was quiet, lit by buzzing sodium lights. I glanced toward the dumpsters. The van was still there. Same angle, same wrongness. About it, had it really been sitting there all night? I stopped near the door, watching it longer than I meant to. The silence pressed in around me. My pulse quickened. Then something caught my eye. Near the dumpster, half hidden under loose trash, was a glint of metal, small, round, catching the light at just the right angle. Without thinking, I walked over. It was maybe 10 feet from the van. I crouched, hesitating for a second, then brushed the trash aside. A coin. At least that's what it looked like. It was darker than any quarter or nickel I'd seen, tarnished yet somehow deliberate. Heavier too when I picked it up. Its surface was etched with shallow markings I didn't recognize. Spirals, jagged lines, symbols that almost seemed to shift when I tilted it in the light. Weird. I slipped it into my pocket without much thought. Probably some token or souvenir. I figured I'd look at it later when I wasn't half asleep. I turned to head back inside. That's when I heard it. A low rumble. Not loud, but steady, growing closer. My eyes darted back to the van. The headlights flicked on, bright and blinding. My breath hitched. The engine roared to life, though I swore I hadn't heard anyone climb in. The van rolled forward, slow, deliberate, its tires crunching over gravel. It stopped just feet from me, headlights glaring like twin suns. I froze. The side door screeched, open, the sound metallic and harsh. 2 figures stepped out. At first I thought they were men. They moved quickly, directly, their bodies tall and thin, dressed in dark clothing. But their movements weren't right. Too smooth. Too fluid, like a video fast-forwarded at random intervals. Their faces were covered, ski masks or something close to it. But the way the fabric clung to their heads seemed unnatural, stretched too tight as if the masks weren't covering faces at all but something else entirely. They spoke to each other in low tones. The sound wasn't language, not really. It was closer to static, layered whispers that made the hairs on my arms stand on end. My body screamed at me to run, but before I could move, one of them reached me. Their hand clamped down on my arm. Cold, too cold, like grabbing a piece of ice from the freezer. I yanked, twisted, fought, but the grip was unyielding. The other stepped closer, raising a gloved hand to cover my mouth. The glove wasn't leather or fabric. It felt like plastic, or worse, something damp and flexible, like skin that wasn't really skin. Panic surged through me. I thrashed, kicking, clawing. My nails scraped their mask, catching on the surface. The fabric tore slightly. For a split second I saw what was underneath. Not skin, not human. Dark, shifting texture like oil underwater, a surface that writhed and shimmered. The thing recoiled, and I broke free just long enough to stagger back. The van loomed behind them, its engine growling, its open door pulsing faintly with light, like it was alive. Its interior didn't look right either. Not seats, not walls. Just an endless blackness that seemed to stretch deeper than the van's body could contain. My mind screamed, "Don't let them take you in there." I turned and bolted. Their footsteps echoed behind me, unnaturally. Fast, slapping the pavement in bursts rather than a rhythm. Objects in the lot seemed to twitch as I passed. Trash bins shuddering, pallets creaking, shadows stretching like reaching arms. I sprinted for the back entrance, lungs tearing, legs burning. The door was just ahead. Behind me I heard the screech of the van's door slamming shut on its own. A sound like laughter or maybe screaming echoed in the lot. I slammed into the door, shoved it open, and stumbled inside. The hallway was empty, cold, fluorescent lit. Normal. I collapsed against the wall, gasping, my heart battering my chest. The coin. My hand dove into my pocket. I pulled it out. Its surface was warmer now, pulsing faintly like it had a heartbeat. The strange symbols etched into it seemed deeper than before, the lines crawling ever so slightly as I stared. My stomach churned. I shoved it back into my pocket, my hands shaking. But even as I stood there, trying to breathe, I knew. They hadn't wanted me. They had wanted this. And now I had it. I didn't go back to work for a week. Walmart called me twice, left voicemails asking why I'd been a no-show, but I couldn't even bring myself to walk past the store in daylight, let alone set foot inside it. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the van's door slamming open on its own, saw those inhuman figures slipping and reshaping in the shadows, their voices echoing inside my skull like some warped recording on repeat. But it wasn't just memory. It was something more. The object, what I now thought of as the coin, though its texture was wrong for metal and its weight seemed to shift every time I held it, was still with me. I hadn't chosen to keep it. I had tried 3 times to get rid of it. Once in the trash, once in a storm drain, once hurling it out into the river. Each time I woke up with it pressed into my palm, cold and heavy, as if my own body had retrieved it while I slept. The first time I chalked it up to panic, maybe I'd imagined throwing it away. The second time, doubt started clawing at my sanity. The third time, I knew there was no natural explanation. I had lost hours that night, time just gone. And when I woke, the coin was back, a dark shimmer crawling across its surface like oil, on water. And then came the dreams. The dreams never began in my bedroom. They always started under the humming fluorescent lights in the cavernous aisles of a Walmart that wasn't quite the same one I had worked in. The layout was wrong. Endless shelves stretching farther than physics should allow, corners turning into tighter and tighter spirals, products that looked almost right but weren't. Cereal boxes with names that made no sense, bottles of soda with labels in languages I couldn't place, and always, far in the back of the store, a door that shouldn't have been there. A door with no handle, only a faint coin-sized indentation at its center. I never made it to the door. Something always stopped me first. Sometimes it was the sound, the squeal of cartwheels echoing too close, though the aisles were empty. Sometimes it was the lights, whole rows flickering out, plunging me into blackness while I stood frozen in the glow of a single overhead lamp. And sometimes it was them, the figures. No masks in the dream. No pretense of being human. Just their true forms, if form was even the right word. Stretched silhouettes crawling across the shelves, faces bending into spirals, mouths opening too wide and yet speaking directly into my mind. You took it. You opened it. You keep it. When I woke, it wasn't relief I felt. It was continuation. The dream didn't end. It bled into waking life. I began noticing things in my apartment shifting subtly, as though they'd been rearranged while I slept. My front door unlocked in the mornings, even though I double-checked the deadbolt at night. My reflection in the bathroom mirror lagged a second behind my movements, just long enough for me to doubt my eyes. And always, the coin lying, where I could see it, on the kitchen counter, on my nightstand, once even on the center of my chest when I woke in a sweat. I tried telling myself it was stress, trauma from the attack. My mind was playing tricks, but deep down, I knew it was. All connected, and that the van, the entities, the coin, they hadn't left. They were waiting. Watching. It reached a breaking point 2 weeks later. I was walking home from the corner store at night, a bag of groceries in hand, when I heard it. The low, rattling hum of an engine idling too close. My heart nearly gave out. I turned my head slowly, terrified of what I'd see, and there it was, the van. Parked at the edge of the lot, headlights off, no driver visible. Its shape was wrong again, like it was breathing. The metal seemed to pulse with a rhythm, a steady inhale and exhale. I dropped the groceries and ran. By the time I reached my apartment door, fumbling with the keys, I heard the squeal of its brakes closer than before, echoing in the night. When I finally got inside, slamming the door behind me, I knew it hadn't been a hallucination. My lungs burned, my hands shook, and when I dumped my pockets onto the counter, the coin wasn't there. It was already waiting on my pillow. After that night, the boundaries collapsed entirely. The dreams came even when I was awake. I'd be standing, in line at the pharmacy, and suddenly the floor tiles under my feet would shimmer, turning into the gleaming wax of Walmart aisles. I'd blink, and for a fraction of a second, everyone around me was gone, replaced by rows of mannequins standing, motionless, their heads turned toward me. Then reality would snap back, leaving me gasping, people staring as if I'd had a seizure. My body wasn't my own anymore. Sleep became a joke. I'd close my eyes for a minute and wake up hours later, standing in places I didn't remember walking. Once, I woke on the edge of the Walmart parking lot itself, barefoot, the coin clenched so tightly in my hand that it had cut crescent wounds into my palm. The entity's whispers grew louder, clearer. They weren't threats anymore. They were instructions. Bring it back. Complete the circle. Open the door. I stopped answering my phone. I stopped leaving the apartment unless I had to. Food spoiled in my fridge, the rent piled up, and all the while I kept staring at that coin, its surface no longer smooth but etched, shifting, alive. When I tilted it in the light, I swore I saw aisles reflected in it, aisles that went on forever. And then came the night I realized it wasn't about taking me. It was about using me. I woke again in the dream Walmart, the humming louder than ever, like every fluorescent bulb in the world buzzing at once. The shelves towered, products melting into one another, and far at the end, the door waited. This time the coin was already in my hand, glowing faintly, fitting perfectly into the indentation on the door's surface. I don't remember walking to it. I only remember the pressure, the unbearable pull in my chest telling me that if I didn't open it now, something worse would happen. I raised the coin, my hand shaking, and pressed it to the door. It clicked into place. The sound was wrong. Not mechanical, not physical. It was like the entire store inhaled. The air bent inward. Shelves curved, walls warped. The floor dropped a fraction of an inch beneath me. And the door began to open. What I saw beyond it wasn't another room. It wasn't even space as I knew it. It was a mirror, but not of me, of us. An entire aisle of figures, rows upon rows, all faceless, all waiting, their hands extended. Behind them, the van. Behind that, more aisles, more doors, stretching out like an infinite hive, and then they stepped through. I woke screaming in my bed, drenched in sweat, but the coin was gone from my nightstand, gone from my apartment entirely. My first instinct was relief. Maybe it had finally ended. Maybe I was free. But then I noticed the change, the hum, not just in my ears now, but in the walls, in the floor, in the air itself. My entire apartment buzzed faintly, the way those fluorescent lights had in the dream. And when I stepped outside onto the balcony, I froze. Down on the street, every car, every lamppost, every shadow looked just a little too sharp, too still. And parked across from my building, where no car had been seconds before, was the van. Its door hung open, moving slowly back and forth in the breeze, though there was no wind. I wasn't free. I had opened the door, and now every night when I try to sleep, I feel them. Not just in dreams, not just across the street, but here. In the corners of my room, in the reflection of my TV when it's off, in the soft scrape of plastic against tile that shouldn't be there. The coin had never been mine to lose. It was theirs. And one day soon, I know they're going to want me to use it again, because the door wasn't meant to stay closed. It was meant to stay open. Several months after that terrifying incident with the van, I found myself back at Walmart. This time, though, I wasn't there for work. I was just picking up some groceries and hair dye, hoping to relax and treat myself over the weekend. I parked my car under the same dimly lit streetlight in the middle of the lot. and as I stepped out, a strange chill ran through me. I brushed it off. The experience from months ago had left me understandably on edge, but I reassured myself. Tonight was just a normal shopping trip. The store was quiet, with only a few people wandering the aisles. As I pushed my cart, collecting milk, bread, and a few other essentials, the calm atmosphere lulled me into a false sense of security. After all, this was Walmart, the place I had worked, the place I had walked through countless times. It felt safe in its familiarity. When I reached the checkout ready to pay, I suddenly realized I had left my purse in the car. "Oh no," I muttered under my breath, annoyed at myself. Turning to the cashier, a young woman with a friendly face, I asked if I could leave my cart at the front while I quickly ran outside to grab it. "No problem," she said with a smile. "Thanks," I replied, trying to shake off the odd unease that had settled in my chest. I hurried toward the entrance, but the moment I stepped outside, the parking lot felt different. An eerie stillness hung in the air. Under the streetlights, the vast emptiness stretched before me, the rows of cars disappearing into the shadows. It was strange how quiet it was, like the entire lot had been abandoned. I forced myself to focus on my task, walking briskly toward my car until something caught my eye. A small glint, a slip of paper tucked under my windshield wiper. I stopped, confused, and instinctively looked around. No one was nearby, just the distant hum of traffic. My pulse quickened as I stepped forward to inspect the note. The words "turn around" were scrawled in jagged, messy handwriting. My heart skipped a beat. "What the hell?" I whispered, a cold shiver running down my spine. I glanced over my shoulder, but the lot was empty. It had to be a prank, right? A sick joke? Shoving the note into my pocket, I tried to shake the creeping dread gnawing at me and quickly unlocked my car door. Then I felt it, that unmistakable prickling sensation at the back of my neck, like I was being watched. My body stiffened. Slowly, I turned my head to glance out the window, and then I saw him. A man, tall, broad-shouldered, was walking quickly toward my car from the shadows. His face was partially covered by a dark bandana, but his eyes, they were unmistakable. Dark, intense, locked onto me. My pulse spiked. Panic surged through me. I froze for a second, my body caught in a primal fight-or-flight response. He was too close, too fast. Without thinking, I yanked the door shut and slammed the lock button, my hands shaking as I fumbled for my keys. The man reached my window. With terrifying speed, he grabbed the handle and yanked, trying to force it open. His face was inches from mine, eyes burning into me as he pressed against the glass. His fist pounded against the window, muffled curses spilling from his lips, words I couldn't quite make out. "Let me in," he growled, his breath fogging up. The glass, my heart pounded so hard it felt deafening. The banging, louder, harder. Again and again. I was trapped. I fumbled desperately for my keys, my fingers numb with fear. Come on," I whispered to myself. Finally, I found them, jamming one into the ignition. The engine roared to life. As soon as it started, I slammed my foot on the gas pedal. The car jerked forward, but the man wasn't done. In the side mirror, I caught a glimpse of him still coming, his eyes locked onto mine. I pressed the gas harder, desperate to escape. A furious shout echoed across the parking lot, followed by a sharp crack. Something struck my window, a rock, maybe metal. It didn't matter. I didn't stop. In the split second before impact, I shifted into drive, my foot slamming down on the accelerator. The car surged forward, and I felt the jarring tug as his hand was ripped from the door handle. Then, glass shattered. A violent explosion of shards scattered across my seat and dashboard. The deafening sound rang in my ears. Cold air rushed in. I screamed. Swerving slightly, I fought through the shock, my foot pressing harder on the gas. The car tore out of the parking lot. I glanced one last time in the mirror. He was still there, running after me. But I couldn't look back anymore. I pushed myself faster, my heart hammering as I sped through the streets. When I finally reached home, my hands were trembling. My breath came in short, ragged gasps. I parked in the driveway and only then realized my fingers were clenched around something. The note. With shaking hands, I unfolded the crumpled paper. 2 words stared back at me. Turn around. A chill ran down my spine, colder than the night air. This hadn't just been a warning. It was a trap. A deliberate lure to get me out of my car, to make me vulnerable. I rushed inside, slamming the door behind me. Locked it. Double-checked every window, every door. I stood in the middle of my living room, the silence of my home suddenly suffocating. The next morning, I returned to Walmart. With my husband. I had to report what had happened. But more than anything, I just needed to know I wasn't alone. Every step into that parking lot brought flashes of his eyes, the way they locked onto mine, the sound of the glass shattering, the echo of his fist pounding against my window. Inside, the manager listened, intently, his eyes wide with shock as I recounted everything. "We'll check the footage," he promised, "and we'll make sure our staff stays vigilant. This won't happen again." But his words only offered so much comfort. The truth was, nothing could erase the terror of that night. Weeks later, the feeling still lingered. Every time I passed that lot, a part of me tensed, instinctively glancing over my shoulder, scanning my surroundings. No matter how much time passed, I couldn't shake the paranoia, and that simple piece of paper, that harmless-looking note, kept me awake at night. It made me wonder how many others had fallen for the same trap. One thing became certain from that day forward: I would never ignore a gut feeling again. I had been working at Walmart for a few months when I first noticed Mark. He wasn't someone who blended into the background. No, he stood out, but not in an obvious way. There was something about him that made you uneasy, even if you couldn't quite explain why. Quiet, always lingering just on the edges of conversations, his eyes never fully meeting yours, yet always watching, always waiting. At first I brushed it off. Some people are just a little odd, right? But then a week later he started offering me rides home. "Need a lift?" he'd ask after every shift, his voice too casual, too smooth. His offer felt almost rehearsed, too eager. I always said no, but that didn't stop him from asking again and again. "It's no trouble," he'd repeat like a line he couldn't let go of. I told myself I was overthinking it. After all, he had never done anything to cross a line, never pressured me, never pushed too hard. But that look in his eyes, the way he always lingered just a second too long, it was starting to wear on me. Then one evening my car broke down. I didn't know what to do. I had to leave it at the shop and my usual ride couldn't make it. I had no choice but to ask for help. And of course Mark was there, like some twisted stroke of fate. "We live near each other anyway," he said, smiling just a little too wide. Hesitated. I should have said no, but I was exhausted. I just wanted to get home. "Thanks," I said, forcing a small smile. "I'll even buy you dinner. My treat." His car was an old, beaten-up Honda, the kind that had seen better days at least a decade ago. Dents, scratches, like it had been through more than a few accidents. Told myself it was just a car. But the moment I got in, I noticed something strange. The passenger door had no handle. "Why's it missing?" I asked, my stomach twisting in unease. "It came like that," Mark replied with a shrug, his eyes darting away. "Just use the window crank." His deflection felt off, too dismissive. I forced a laugh, trying to push aside the discomfort gnawing at me. Rolling the window up, I ignored the icy feeling creeping down my spine. "It's nothing," I told myself. "Just a ride. Just a guy trying to be nice, nothing more." But then, as we pulled out of the parking lot, I noticed his hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. The car jerked roughly as he shifted gears, his focus locked on the road, too stiff, too tense. Trying to ease the awkwardness, I made small talk. I told him about the diner down the street, the one where I planned to buy him dinner. He didn't respond. He didn't even acknowledge me. It was like I wasn't there at all, The air in the car grew thick, suffocating. Then, without warning, he swerved slightly to the right. Not enough to go off the road, but just enough to make my heart slam into my ribs. "Everything okay?" I asked, my voice tight, shaking. "Yeah. Fine," he muttered. But something about the way he said it, flat, detached, sent another wave of unease rolling through me. I glanced back at the missing door handle. Suddenly it didn't feel like an oddity. It felt like a trap. My instincts screamed at me to get out, but I told myself I was overreacting. "Why don't you fix that door?" I asked, forcing my voice to stay light. Mark's face stiffened, his jaw clenched. Mark's jaw tightened, and for the first time he looked at me, not with his usual vacant stare, but with something darker lurking behind his eyes. 3 years, he said, his voice low. 3 years I've been waiting for this. I didn't understand. For a moment my mind went blank, my gut twisting into knots as I tried to process his words. 3 years? I echoed, forcing the words out. "What are you talking about?" His eyes locked onto mine, and a slow, twisted smile curled across his lips. 3 years. Waiting. The words hung in the air like a threat, stealing the breath from my lungs. A deep instinctive fear clawed at me. I needed to get out, fast. Trying to stay calm, I shifted slightly, pretending to adjust my seat while reaching for the window crank. If I could just get it down far enough, just enough to scream, maybe someone would hear me. But before I could lower it any further, pain shot through my side like fire. I looked down. My stomach dropped. He was holding a taser, the prongs pressed into my ribs. I froze, my body locking up in stunned disbelief. Then he pressed harder. A searing jolt of electricity ripped through me, setting every nerve in my body on fire. My vision blurred, my muscles seized. My breath caught in my throat as the pain swallowed me whole. In that instant, I knew. If I didn't act now, this ride would be my last. I slumped back against the seat, forcing my body to go limp. My heart pounded as I focused on the sound of his breathing, the way he muttered under his breath. I couldn't make out the words, but I knew he was watching me, waiting to see if I'd stay down. I had seconds. As soon as he turned his attention back to the road, I moved. My hand shot to the steering wheel and I yanked it hard to the left. The car veered violently, tires screeching as we slammed into the guardrail with a deafening crash. Mark shouted, his grip on the wheel slipping. That was my chance. Without hesitation, I lunged for the door. It had been stuck before, but now, finally, it gave way. His door was still locked, but mine wasn't. Scrambling over him, I kicked wildly, shoving him back as I fought to escape. Tumbled out onto the dark road, my breath ragged, my heart hammering against my ribs. Then, in the distance, headlights. I stumbled forward, waving frantically, my entire body shaking. The first car sped past. The second slowed. The window rolled down, and the second I saw another human face, I collapsed, gasping for air as I tried to explain everything. Later that night, the police found Mark at his apartment. His walls were covered in disturbing photographs, some of people he worked with, including me. And in one corner, there was a single picture, faded, torn at the edges, of me, as though he had been waiting for this moment for far, far too long. Even now, I can't shake the feeling that he's still out there. And every time I see a car with a missing door handle, my heart skips a beat.